My name is Brittney Benton, and I'm a composer currently based in New Haven, Connecticut. I'm doing my master's at Yale at the moment. One of the things that I really wanted to focus on was balance between the three instruments because the piano has the capability to overpower the violin and the cello, making sure that every part had its chance to shine. Sometimes the piano can just be used as an accompaniment instrument. I didn't really want to do that. Also, I'm a pianist, so I'm a little bit biased. So I wanted to give the piano some chances to shine as well. But yeah, the main thing was just balance. A lot of dynamic markings, so many dynamic markings. I made use of the una corda pedal in the middle of the piece, which is like a really it's basically like the soft pedal, the pedal that makes the piano quieter. I was also doing something similar with the cello and the violin to create kind of like a muted atmosphere where everyone was kind of on the same level. And I thought that was really effective hearing it in performance. I'm quite proud of that. I mean, every performer is going to bring some sort of individuality to their playing. That's something you can't necessarily write on the page. Like, sure, you can give them instructions, but every violinist, every cellist, every pianist is going to sound different. And I think that's a good thing. The piece isn't going to sound exactly the same every time, and that's fine. But working with them was really great. They're really nice, really good, really talented. It was great. So I'm a pretty like typical tonal composer. I've done a lot of work over the past years to kind of step outside of that and use harmony in ways that, let's say, like 19th century, 20th century composers really wouldn't. Um, but for this piece, the tonal center is kind of around maybe D minor, maybe some sort of modal scale. I don't stick to it throughout because if I like something, I'm just gonna do it. I try not to limit myself in that way. Um, but for this piece, I really wanted to make it a point that D was important. And then when you hear it coming back in the end, as a reference to the beginning, that you recognize it as a tonal center. I don't like to limit myself, which is funny because I'm about to say I write a lot of chamber music, which is very limiting. But you can find your own ways to be creative within those limits. I mean, I don't really consider myself like an orchestral writer. I can and will do it probably in the future, but I like the more intimate what am I trying to say? Intimate ensembles, especially when you're actually working with them. Like you can't know every orchestra member. Like it's impossible. But like with a trio, you can absolutely get to know those people. Um, and work with them in a more one-on-one way than you would maybe in an orchestra setting where you're kind of working with the conductor who's then working with the orchestra. There's kind of um a barrier, not a big barrier. Obviously you can talk to the orchestra, but it's different. I just like chamber ensemble writing. I ask myself that all the time. It's like, how do I like you have the option of starting with like a reduction. You have the option of just like jumping straight in. You have the option of working in sections. I'm not typically someone who does piano reductions first or any sort of reduction first. I kind of just jump in and kind of I write pretty linearly for the most part. For this one, for example, though, I have taken or written a section that I know I'm going to get to eventually, and I have the beginning. So right now I'm working on the glue between the two sections. So it really varies. Although I do tend to write things in patches and just connect them. But yeah, it really varies. This time though, I'm just kind of going for it and seeing what happens. The piano trio was something that I once again I just jumped in and went. Most of the time I come up with some sort of inspiration beforehand. But because this piece was due, I think it was due in March, and I didn't fully have time to come up with like a concept for it. I just jumped in. But a lot of the time I try to come up with some sort of narrative or some sort of imagery. Like I really like taking listeners on a journey with my music. This one, it didn't happen for because I was kind of on a timeline. But most of the time, I like to kind of get creative with the story and the narrative and see what I could pull out of the audience, see what they come out of it with. Okay, I do have one. It was a chamber orchestra piece that I wrote for the Lowell Chamber Orchestra, and it's like a fantasy setting. So I'm just prepared. It does sound weird, but it's okay. So the story of it is that there's this gigantic like golem, like this rock golem figure, right? That has been sleeping for, I don't know, decades, years and years and years, and it senses danger. So the first movement is it like waking up and being like, oh man, there's danger. Uh-oh. The second one is it defending the town that it's in from the danger. And then the third one is it going back to sleep, going back to slumber. So that's my favorite. I'm really proud of that one. So when I'm trying to write a story or like a narrative or things like that, I try to take an idea, for example, like fear. What does fear sound like in music? Probably dissonance, maybe some tremolo in the strings, things like that. Like what does happiness sound like? Usually it's like major, like maybe upbeat, like things like that, and then distilling it into the instrumentation that I have and distilling it into whatever instruments that I have available. So the second movement, the one that is really like the fight is really upbeat. The harp has a lot of arpeggios going on. There's tremolos in the strings. It's a whole thing. So yeah, just really trying to represent the emotions through whatever I have available to me. I started composing like I say around like 8 years old. I think I wrote like maybe one or two things when I was 8. I don't really count that. It is technically composition, but I didn't really start writing things down like literally in like a notation program until I was like 14.
Hmm.
So I'm 25 now. So what was that, 11 years? I first got it started when I play a lot of video games still, but I played a lot of video games when I was younger. And I was like, I could write something like this. I could write music for like a cave level. I can write music for the yada yada, whatever. So that's how I started. And then when I got to college, I started writing like concert music. I still write like game and film music too. I want all of that to be a part of my thing as a composer. But yeah, it all got started with me loving video game music. Composing for me, I would say self-expression. I like that. It's just like a creative outlet that I love. Like I love music. I love creating. And kind of, I think I'm suited for it. I also feel like sometimes there's a bit of a bias towards music for media. Like it's not taken seriously, and I've never really understood that. Like
Yeah,
I've never gotten that at all because it like if you take the time to really dive in, sure, there's gonna be music you don't like, but there's gonna be music you don't like everywhere, right? So if you
exactly.
really take the time to dive in and look for music that you like, look for games that you like, you're gonna be set. Like there's stuff out there for everyone. But yeah, I think it's game and film music is basically on the same level as concert music at this point. Okay, so my favorite one of all time. This is the one that basically got me composing in the first place. It's a Pokemon game from like 2008. I
Okay,
think it was
okay.
Pokemon Diamond and Pearl was my first Pokemon game, and I'm quite sure that all of my harmonic and melodic choices are influenced by that game. I'm like 90% sure. I love that. It was a game called Diddy Kong Racing on the Nintendo DS. That's another good one. I really love the soundtrack to Journey by Austin Wintory.
Hmm.
Lovely music, lovely music. The music from The Last of Us video game, the music from the Final Fantasy series. I can go on. I can go on and on. I love music that has like motifs and leitmotifs in it that represent like characters and places and ideas and things like that. which is another reason. I mean, the Final Fantasy music is incredible. John Williams music, incredible, so good. Yeah, I'm really gravitated towards um music that represents something in a game rather than just being like background that doesn't really mean anything. It's going good. It's going good. It's going fast. It's going so fast. I'm in my second year now coming up. My second semester was definitely better than my first, but I feel like that's just kind of how it goes, which makes
Mm.
me feel better. But yeah, I did a lot this last semester. I wrote a piece for the Yale Cellos, which is like a cello ensemble, like 12 cellos, that's hopefully going to get premiered this fall. So that's going to be very cool and fun. On top of the orchestra piece, which I have to finish literally for my degree. Um, so that's going to be a thing too. But it's going well. I like it out here. I think I'm lucky to have started on the piano, I think, because I feel
Mm.
like that's the instrument that everyone like has to know, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with. I get it because it's very visual, like you can literally see what you're doing. Particularly for writing piano music, it's helpful. There are some times where for example, I'll have an idea and I'll play it out on the keyboard and record it. If you're trying to do, for example, I'm writing a brass quintet right now that is basically an idea that I had that I recorded that I then transcribed into my notation program. Um, so playing it on the piano is different than a brass ensemble playing it. So like there's things I'm gonna have to fix in there to make it more like a brass ensemble so that, for example, because I just transcribed it, the tuba is in its upper range the entire time. They don't, I
Mm.
mean, they can do that. They're completely capable of doing that, but is that really idiomatic tuba writing? So I don't know. Being a pianist has its ups and downs, I guess. Not often, but it definitely has its uses. Like if I want something to like, let's say this would be a climax in the last like three-fourths of the piece. How long do I want to keep tension? Who's going to be keeping the tension within the whatever ensemble that I'm using?
Mm.
Am I going to use dynamics to do that? Am I going to use the tempo to do that? Like there's so many ways to create tension. Most of the tension in the piano trio, I would say, comes towards the end as it's coming up to the climax and everyone is really going for it. It's weird because it's the same music, but the space that you play the music in makes so much of a difference. So the church in Italy was great acoustically, a nice little bit of reverb. Not every piece needs that kind of room. I think I got
Mm.
lucky on that one. It sounded great. In the botanical garden, it sounded great. But I just think it's really weird to consider how different spaces affect the same notes and the same type of playing. For example, the pizzicato in the church, boomy, very boomy.
Mm.
It was nice. I liked it, but in like the botanical garden, you're not going to have that same kind of boom. I mean, both are fine. It's just weird. Music is weird. I am also working on a song cycle. I have three out of the 7 or 8 that I want to write. I'm not sure how many there's going to be. I have 3 of them done. I might continue working on them this semester. It's called Only in Dreams, and it's about like a person dreaming and thinking of their past and their present and their future and things like that. Um, yeah, so that might come into. I also want to write a piece for harp. That's another thing. There's a lot. There's a lot I want to do. I think the date for the orchestra premieres will be in December. I don't have an exact date, which is unfortunate. Same for the cello piece. I know it's going to get performed probably in the fall. I don't have a date.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this interview and want to see more like it, check out the 30 by 30 by 30 playlist on our channel. For more information about the 30 by 30 by 30 project, check out the website linked to the right.